Hello everyone, Just Podcast TV is here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified on new contents.
Episode 19. Too Shameless. He yelled at Larry. "Larry, are you crazy? Come at me if you want. Don't be rude to my client. You think you're great just because you're the boss. I'll quit today, okay? With a boss like you who doesn't know right from wrong, the company will be finished sooner or later." Mitchell was fuming. He pointed at Larry's nose and scolded him loudly, scaring Larry and the other employees. Ever since Mitchell entered the company, they had never seen him so furious. But today, not only did he scold the boss's lover, but he even scolded the man himself. Did the sun rise from the west today? "Mitchell, you!" Getting berated by Mitchell like this, Larry was angered to speechlessness. However, Mitchell looked like he wanted to hit someone. The shorter in build, Larry became scared under his overwhelming aura. "You what? You don't deserve to be the boss. You can fool around with your lover in private, but not here. Do you even know what you are doing? Do you know how big of a client Mr. Tucker is? I'm afraid it'll scare you to the point of peeing your pants. How dare you offend him? I think you don't want to live anymore." Mitchell's fury was reaching the heavens. For a moment, he could not vent his emotions at all. He did not give Larry any face and once again cursed at him. He knew that there were disappointing employees, but it was his first time meeting such an unbelievable boss. The whole company was quiet. Only Mitchell's rebukes were echoing in the hall. Mary Ann also hid behind Larry. She did not dare to look at the incomparably fierce Mitchell. She was worried that he might really hit her in a fit. The other colleagues were the same. As they stared at the furious Mitchell, each and every one of them kept quiet. They did not even whisper amongst themselves. James stood there with his hands behind his back. After Mitchell vented his frustrations for him, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. He gave Mitchell a thumbs up, praising his actions wholeheartedly. He felt that the guy had done an excellent job. It was true that almost everyone was barely surviving in this world, so they should respect each other. But for those who didn't follow the etiquette, there was no need to be polite to them. Instead, one had to knock down their arrogance and let them remember that they should respect you in the future. James's laughter brought Larry back to his senses. He had been too shocked by the earlier scene. "Oh yeah, Haynes. I wonder if you are interested in working for me and helping me manage my property." Larry was about to exercise his authority as the boss by throwing James out. However, right at that moment, James took a step forward and faced Mitchell. When everyone heard his offer, their faces revealed an undistinguished mocking expression. James's clothes from head to toe didn't add up to more than $50. Claiming to have a property in New York was simply boasting. No one would believe it. If Mitchell hadn't personally witnessed James' 10 property certificates last night, he wouldn't have believed it either. After all, humans judge others based on their looks. It was in their nature. "Your real estate? Brag all you want. But I'm curious, what kind of property do you have in this city?" Mary Ann sneered, staring at James in disdain. Although Larry did not say anything, his eyes were also full of mockery towards James. No one would believe that someone like James would have any property or resources in New York City, not even in the slums. However, as the party in question, Mitchell was too excited to answer James's question. Help James manage his property? Really? What did it signify? It meant he could become the private property manager of this young boss, someone with millions worth of fixed assets. Mitchell would never have dreamed that he could work for such a big shot. "What? You don't want to?" Seeing Mitchell standing there in a daze and not saying anything, James revealed a smile and teased him. "No, Mr. Tucker, I'm willing. I'm very willing. It's my biggest fortune to be able to follow you. I couldn't ask for more. I was too excited just now, so I forgot my manners. Thank you, sir, for thinking so highly of me. From now on, I'll do my best to manage your property for you." Mitchell snapped back to reality with James's reminder. He started appreciating James's kindness with tears of gratitude. "That's good. It seems like you have nothing to do with this place now. There's no point in staying here any longer. Come with me." James waved his hand and told Mitchell to follow him. Larry did not have any chance to use his authority to throw Mitchell out. "Yes, sir, please." Mitchell nodded respectfully. He then politely extended his hand to James in a gentlemanly manner. He couldn't be any more humble. How could Larry let the two of them go so easily after that earlier scolding? Even more, how could he let James occupy the limelight just like that? What beautiful acting. You two have pretty great harmony. It's really a waste of talent if the two of you don't go make a movie. Boss Larry suddenly burst into laughter. He believed that Mitchell was afraid of being laughed at by others if he got fired. Hence, he and his friend worked together to put on a show so that he could get off the stage without losing too much face. After heartily laughing for a while, he continued, Mitchell, acting won't fill your stomach. You can leave arrogantly today, but I hope you won't cry and beg me tomorrow. If you come back to work again, you won't have any reputation. Looking at Larry's hateful face, Mitchell really wanted to scold him. Again. Just as Larry finished speaking, James handed the black plastic bag to Mitchell and said, Haynes, help me hold this. Yes, sir. Mitchell nodded and reached out to take the bag. Right at that moment, James deliberately let go of the black plastic bag. Mitchell's hand grabbed the empty air. The 10 property certificates in the black plastic bag fell to the ground. The bright red certificates instantly caught the eyes of everyone present. They were stunned on the spot. No one thought that an ordinary garbage bag contained such a shocking amount of wealth. I'm sorry, sir, Mitchell trailed off, noticing the expressions of the people around him. At the same time, he also saw an evil smile hanging on James's face. He instantly understood his intentions. He did it on purpose. His goal was to slap Larry and everyone else's faces. Earlier, they humiliated and looked down on him, so he would let them take a good look at his capital. Thinking of this, Mitchell shut his mouth and stood there quietly. He was not in a hurry to pick up the property ownership certificates scattered on the ground. He would let these people feast their eyes and stimulate them. Larry better take a good look as well. After missing out on such a big deal, he would be drowning in regret. This was a real estate agency. Identifying property certificates was a compulsory course for every employee here before they took up their positions. Thus, they were able to tell the level of the property certificates at a glance, as well as their approximate value. Oh my God! 10 certificates? $10 million worth of real estate? Everyone, including Larry, let out a cry of surprise when they saw the property ownership certificate that fell from James's hand. In this era where houses were more expensive than gold, especially in New York City where every inch of land cost a leg, anyone would be considered a wealthy existence if they owned 10 properties in the suburbs. Furthermore, placed in front of them now were 10 million worth of real estate certificates. When Larry looked at James again, his mouth was wide open. He couldn't say anything for a long time. His eyes were full of regret, and he had no idea what to say. He was not alone. No one here expected that James was actually a low-profile boss, a true billionaire. But it seemed like it was already too late. Larry felt remorse and embarrassment washing over him. He could not say anything, though. The point was that he had missed out on such a big deal. He felt like his heart was bleeding. But then, a shrewd and calculating look flashed in his eyes. How could Larry let such a huge client go so easily? Larry's expression changed faster than flipping a page. He looked at Mitchell like he was looking at his most precious employee. He even revealed a smile that was more pleasant than when he saw his own father. Haynes, what's going on? Mitchell stared at Larry, but he was not in a hurry to answer his question. Instead, he just let out a meaningful smile. He had seen shameless people, but he had never seen someone as shameless as Larry. He could still behave as if nothing had happened. He felt that the guy had skin thicker than a hippopotamus. Episode 20. You Don't Deserve It. Mitchell's reaction made Larry feel awkward. He didn't know how to continue. However, Mary Ann couldn't care about it so much. She shouted at Mitchell like before. Mitchell, who do you think you are? Mr. Miller asked you a question. Are you deaf? As soon as she finished, Larry turned to her. "Shut up, you terrible woman," he roared. There was no trace of tender affection anymore. In Larry's eyes, Mitchell's value was much more important than Mary Ann's. She was just a toy to him. This tycoon was a client brought by Mitchell. If he wanted to keep this big client here, he would have to rely on Mitchell. He might even have to suck up to him. She used her hand to cover her mouth and stared at Larry in horror. She did not know why he was so mad suddenly. However, she didn't dare to ask Larry. She could only sob in silence, appearing pitiful like a hurt cat. Larry ignored her and turned around without even glancing at her. A fawning smile appeared on his face, and he said to Mitchell, "Haynes, you did the right thing. Larry's real estate agency has always treated customers as their top priority. How can we be rude to our customers? As long as you do this well, not only will you become an official employee, but you will also become a manager. Now hurry up and tell me who this gentleman is. I better receive him personally. We shouldn't neglect this distinguished guest." Hearing Larry's shameless words, Mitchell really wanted to scold him again. However, he kept his emotions in check. After all, he had a new boss now, and he wanted to maintain his image of being a good person in his mind. Now that he was following James, this big boss, those temptations of promotion and becoming a manager were nothing in his eyes. Looking at the hypocritical Larry and the pitiful Mary Ann, an idea suddenly flashed in his mind. Wasn't Larry greedy? Didn't Mary Ann look down on others? He didn't mind giving them a hard time and teaching them a lesson. "Mr. Miller, are you talking about Mr. Tucker?" Mitchell suddenly turned calm. He stared at Larry and looked earnest. Yes. Larry saw Mitchell's changed attitude and thought that he still had a chance to gain James's favor. He immediately nodded like a chicken pecking rice. Mitchell squatted and picked up the property ownership certificate on the ground. He opened them one by one and placed them in front of Larry. "James, Mr. Tucker is not a big client at all. He only owns 10 floors in the Global Financial Center. Nothing big. Global Financial Center. 10 floors." Once Mitchell's voice faded, the whole company was once again filled with exclamations. "This is a billionaire boss. How is he not a big client?" Larry looked at the property ownership certificate in Mitchell's hand and was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out. Even Mary Ann, who was sobbing, turned to look at James with newfound respect. Although Larry knew that Mitchell was up to no good, he didn't dare to offend him. He forced a smile and said, "Haynes, don't talk nonsense. Mr. Tucker is such a big boss. Why isn't he a big client? He's a distinguished guest of our company. What are you guys waiting for? Hurry up and bring him something to drink. Rather bring it to me. I'll serve it myself." Larry waved his hand at the 2 employees beside him and quickly ordered, "Hey, stop. Mr. Miller, oh, no, it should be sir now. Yes, sir. I think you forgot something. Does Mr. Tucker have anything to do with you?" Mitchell put away the property ownership certificates and gave Larry a teasing look. "Haynes, what are you saying? You're an employee of my company and your client is the company's client. Why does Mr. Tucker have nothing to do with me?" To keep James, Larry didn't mind his status at all. He acted as if nothing had happened earlier. "Damn, Larry, why are you so shameless? You can still say something like that? Wake up. I'm Mr. Tucker's employee now. It has nothing to do with you or your company." Mitchell couldn't bear with this guy's shamelessness anymore. Once Mitchell said it out loudly, even if Larry was more outrageous, he couldn't say anything now. "Mitchell, let's go. What else do you have to say to them?" James saw that he had already achieved his goal, so he waved his hand at Mitchell. "Yes, sir." Mitchell put away the property ownership certificates and followed behind James. The 2 of them walked out of the company. However, Larry was still unwilling to give up. He quickly walked in front of James with a smile on his face and blocked his way. Then he said to James with a flattering expression, "Mr. Tucker, please wait a moment. It's a misunderstanding. Everything's a misunderstanding. It was our employee who was rude to you, so it's our fault. I'll immediately ask her to apologize to you. Mary Ann, come over here and apologize to Mr. Tucker. Hurry up. If you dare to tarry, you're fired." Larry glared at Mary Ann. He couldn't care less about their relationship. Marianne was nothing in front of such a big client. Marianne was already feeling wronged. Now that Larry forced her to apologize to James, she felt even more distraught. However, she did not dare to go against Larry's orders. She could only pitifully walk in front of James. She lowered her head and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Tucker. I was in the wrong just now. I shouldn't have been so rude to you. I'm sorry." James put his hands behind his back and silently looked at her. He did not have any sympathy for Marianne's miserable ending. All of this was caused by Marianne herself. It was what she deserved. This was the price she should pay for not respecting others. Seeing James's silence, Larry thought that he was not satisfied. He scolded Marianne again. "Apologize properly." Marianne was unwilling to humiliate herself again in front of so many people. However, under Larry's fierce eyes, she had no other choice. In the end, she stood in front of James with a face full of grievance and unwillingness. She once again apologized. At this moment, her appearance was truly miserable. Her makeup was ruined by her tears, and her cheeks had an extra handprint. Moreover, she had to lower herself in front of someone she treated as a peasant, losing all her self-esteem. Unlike her, Mitchell's heart was filled with indescribable pleasure. Damn it, this bully should have such an ending. "Mr. Tucker, do you think your anger has subsided?" Larry turned to James with a smile, afraid that he would not be satisfied with just that. James said with a smile, "You're thinking too much. There's nothing here that made me angry, so I don't have anything to be angry about. As for misunderstandings, there are none. With your identity, you don't deserve to be misunderstood by me." After James finished speaking, he took Mitchell and strode out of the company. Larry, who looked so embarrassed that he was about to die, was stunned on the spot. He didn't know what to do. Episode 21, Larry's Huge Loss. Larry stared at James and Mitchell as they receded. He clenched his fist tightly and stomped his feet in anger. He wanted to please James and persuade him to stay, but James did not care. Instead, he lost all his prestige in front of his employees. Larry felt that his high and mighty status and dignity as the boss got trampled under James's feet. In front of James, he was like an insignificant clown dancing around the circus. Larry's heart was burning with fury in his chest like a volcano. However, he couldn't afford to offend James, who was stinking rich. Therefore, he felt stifled in his heart. He had nowhere to vent his anger, and his eyes turned red. At that moment, his gaze fell on Mary, who was still looking at the ground and sobbing quietly. It was as if he had found an outlet to vent out all his frustrations. Larry walked over and without saying anything, he slapped Mary across the face. "You disgraceful woman! Why are you crying? You've ruined my company!" Larry pointed at Mary and yelled loudly. The force behind the slap instantly knocked the wind out of Marianne's chest, and she staggered back a couple of steps. She looked up at Larry in anger, but couldn't form any words. This was definitely going to get him into trouble later. When the surrounding employees saw their boss fuming in anger, they all kept quiet out of fear and did not dare to stop him. Even after slapping and scolding her, Larry's anger hadn't subsided yet. In the end, he grabbed her by her hand and dragged her to the door. He pushed her out of the company. He pointed at Mary and yelled, "You're a disaster. Get out of my company. From now on, you are fired." Marianne was crying hysterically now. She didn't want to lose her job, but she had been too humiliated now. She had never been treated so poorly before, let alone by the man she loved. This wasn't only the end of her career, but also the end of her relationship. She silently gathered herself and started leaving from there without another word. At this time, James and Mitchell, who had just walked out of the company, stopped as well. They turned around and watched this scene. However, there was not a trace of sympathy in their eyes. This was the outcome she had deserved. Larry watched angrily as Mary left. He couldn't care less about their previous relationship. As Mary left, a Rolls-Royce Phantom stopped in front of Larry's real estate company's gate. A handsome middle-aged man in his 40s stepped out of the car. The man was dressed casually. Although his clothes were not branded, they naturally gave off a unique, noble aura. This kind of temperament was developed by a person's environment and upbringing. It was not something that ordinary people could pull off. Despite unbranded clothes, his car already indicated his extraordinary identity. Larry, standing at the entrance of the company, originally had a face full of rage. However, when he saw that another big customer had come to visit, his eyes immediately lit up. He put on a smile and ran towards the man to greet him. "I was wondering why there would be magpies chirping on the tree in front of my company's entrance. It turns out that there are guests visiting. Welcome, please come in." Larry glanced at James while talking to the man. He then extended his hand and politely invited him in. He had just suffered a blow from James, so he thought that he could regain some of his esteem now. "Haynes, I'm sorry. I was dealing with something important in the suburbs, so I came a little late. I'm really sorry." When the man noticed Mitchell standing at the side, he walked straight towards him, not even casting a glance at Larry. Larry was ignored without mercy. For a moment, he had nowhere to put his hand. An ugly expression appeared on his face. The situation was unimaginably awkward. He was a boss, yet he was ignored again. He felt that his self-respect that had been trampled by James earlier had now turned into mush. But facing such an important person with an unknown background, he still did not dare provoke him. He could only swallow his anger. "Mr. Emery, you're too polite. You are not late at all. It's just the perfect timing." Mitchell looked at James and then cast a scornful glance at Larry. He smiled at the man meaningfully. His name was Jeff Emery, and he was the boss who called him the other day saying that he was looking for an office in the Global Financial Center. Mitchell called Jeff in the taxi and told him about James's offer. When Jeff heard that there was an entire floor available, he didn't beat around the bush. He wanted the whole floor and even agreed to James's condition that the deal must be sealed today. Although Mitchell had emphasized on the phone that he should make haste, he still didn't expect him to come so quickly. "That's good. Good. Well, is the boss you mentioned here? We can discuss the details at once." Jeff gave Mitchell a gracious smile. He could hardly wait anymore. Seeing this scene, Larry suddenly felt like he had been slapped in the face again. He originally thought that he could use his big client to save the day. However, he never expected the man to go straight to Mitchell. This feeling of being ignored by others made Larry feel like he was going crazy. However, he suppressed the ball of fury in his belly due to the strong curiosity bubbling in his heart. He silently looked at the trio, wishing to see what they were going to talk about next. "He's here. Mr. Emery, let me introduce him to you. This is Mr. James Tucker. The floor you want to rent is Mr. Tucker's property." Ignoring the curiosity in Larry's eyes, Mitchell quickly introduced James to Jeff Emery. "So you are Mr. Tucker. Hello. I'm Jeff Emery from Atlas Foreign Trade. Nice to meet you." Jeff did not put on any airs. Instead, he extended his hand and introduced himself to James. However, the moment he said that, not only James but even Larry and all the employees here looked shocked. Atlas Foreign Trade was the biggest foreign trading company in New York City. It specialized in e-commerce and external trade and was one of the top companies in the entire New York City. It was very famous in the business world of New York, and almost everyone knew about it. Many university students dreamed of working there after graduation. James, who had graduated from New York University, had also submitted his resume to try his luck, but he did not receive any response. James did not expect that this low-key and humble person in front of him was actually the boss of Atlas Foreign Trade, Jeff Emery. "Hello, I'm James." James shook Jeff Emery's hand with a smile. Larry finally understood everything. James was the owner, while Jeff Emery of Atlas Foreign Trade was the tenant. These two big clients were procured by Mitchell, a former employee of his company. It would have been a huge deal for his company. But now, with Mitchell's departure, he could only watch at the sidelines as this great opportunity slipped away in front of him. The rent of one floor at the Global Financial Center for a year was at least $1.5 million. According to the 2% commission, the company could earn $30,000 from this one deal, not to mention that James still had 9 more floors. Larry's heart bled, indescribable pain and regret overwhelming his body. But there was nothing he could do now.